Hello and welcome to Madico U. This is lesson 2 of our solar control film training, the electromagnetic spectrum. Here we see a representation of the solar spectrum. Of interest to us in the window film industry is the ultraviolet, the visible, and the infrared. Ultraviolet is recognized as 100 to 400 nanometers. UV radiation is broken into 3 categories: UVA, UVB, and UVC. UVC is between 100 and 280 nanometers. Almost all of the UVC is blocked by the atmosphere, and it's not a risk to us at the surface of the Earth. UVB between 280 and 315 nanometers. Some of this is blocked by the atmosphere, but the portion that does get through is a major cause of sunburn. UVA between 315 to 400 nanometers is the greatest risk for cancer because all of this gets through the atmosphere, and it's just as threatening to us in the winter as it is in the summer, which is unlike UVB. The solar heat gain from UV is minimal. It accounts for about 3% of the heat that we feel from the sun. Visible light between 400 and 700 nanometers is responsible for about 44% of the heat that we feel. Near infrared between 700 and 2,500 nanometers is responsible for about 53% of the solar heat gain. This illustration outlines the bulk of the electromagnetic spectrum. Shorter wavelengths are to the right, longer wavelengths are to the left. Reading from the right to the left, we begin with gamma radiation. This is the type of radiation that can kill you. Moving up to X-rays, then ultraviolet radiation, then visible light, the near infrared, the far infrared, microwaves, and as the wavelengths increase, all the way up to radio waves. The areas of interest to us and that we can affect with window films are UV, visible, and infrared. Infrared light is light that has a wavelength that is greater than the red light that we can see. Infrared light is invisible to our eyes. The infrared light windows and window films are concerned with have a range between 780 nanometers to 25,000 nanometers. Near infrared is between 780 and 2,500 nanometers, while far infrared is between 2,500 and 25,000 nanometers. Near infrared is the heat that you feel from the sun, while far infrared is the heat that you feel from an object, like a fire or a stove top. Near IR is reported and measured as IR rejection from 780 to 2,500 nanometers. Far IR is measured and reported as emissivity, measured from 2,500 to 25,000 nanometers. The visible light is the portion of the spectrum that we can see with our eyes. Light is an electromagnetic wave, and its color depends on its wavelength. Like all waves, it has an infinite number of wavelengths, and those wavelengths are what give it its color. When the wavelengths are short, around 380 nanometers, we perceive them as blues and violets, and when they're longer, around 700 nanometers, we perceive them as reds. Your typical eyes can see between 380 and 780 nanometers. UV light, ultraviolet light, is invisible light that has shorter wavelengths than the visible light, but longer wavelengths than X-rays. There's 3 types of UV light: UVA, UVB, and UVC. Each of these behave differently as they travel through our atmosphere. UVA is between 320 nanometers and 380 nanometers. All of this transmits through our atmosphere, and it's the greatest risk for cancer because it's just as threatening in the winter as it is in the summer, unlike UVB. UVB is between 290 and 320 nanometers. This is partially absorbed by our ozone layer. The part that gets through is a major cause of sunburn. UVC between 100 and 290 nanometers is all absorbed by our atmosphere in the ozone layer, and it's not a risk for us at the surface. UV radiation is ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation is even more dangerous than non-ionizing to living tissue. By fundamentally changing the chemical makeup of an atom, this kind of radiation can cause molecular damage and the unchecked cellular growths known as cancers. We talk about ultraviolet light, it's important to discuss fading as well. To effectively control fading, it's important to control not only the ultraviolet light, but to control some amount of the visible light and the infrared heat. If you were to block out all of the UV light, you're only blocking out 40% of the cause of fading. If you blocked out all of the ultraviolet light, all of the visible, and all of the near infrared, you would only block out 90% of the cause of fading, and you'd be in the dark. In comparison, if you controlled all of the UV and 50% of the visible and 50% of the infrared, you would block 65% of the cause of fading. Window films reduce fading from the exterior sunlight, but it doesn't completely eliminate fading, as no window film does. However, by choosing the right window film for the situation, you can greatly reduce the harmful solar rays and prolong the appearance of valuable furnishings, fabrics, and finishings. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jesse Manship, Technical Service Engineer. You can be reached at jmanship@madico.com. Also on is Jay Larkin, our Business Development Manager. He can be reached at jlarkin@madico.com. Again, thank you.